Celibacy on a spiritual journey. I'm not one of those people who is like, oh, in order to reach spiritual enlightenment, you must be celibate. No, I never had plans in this direction. um, it was something that as my journey progressed to a certain level, to a certain understanding, to a certain cosmic knowledge, less and less did I find myself able to simply partake in the physical. I've never really been that person in that sense because I identify as demisexual. I really do need some kind of mental, emotional, some kind of connection there before I feel any kind of attraction for anybody. That said, even beyond that, what I realized is even within dating, I just wasn't really feeling that desire to engage in a sexual manner. And it wasn't for lack of like personal drive. That really hasn't changed. The drive is still there as it's not as it's always been, but it's definitely there. But what I've realized is that even that drive has changed in its focus. What I mean by that is, whereas in the past, that drive was more physically focused, now that drive has become more spiritually focused. And so I've gotten to a point now, and I've been celibate over 3 years, I think like 3.5 years. And I have dated in that time. And even in the dating, if I didn't feel a very strong spiritual connection, I had no desire in that direction with a person. And I don't think this gets talked about enough. Like there are schools of thought in spiritual spaces that say that you should be celibate if you're on a spiritual journey. I don't think that's the case. I think maybe not everybody is going to do well with that. You know, I don't think it should be a requirement. I don't feel like your creative energy should be limited by someone else's ideals or ideas. I feel like it's such a very personal thing because our creative force belongs to us. But I think some of us just end up on this path not by an actual decision and not by an idea or adhering to an idea or ideal or a rule. I think some of us end up on this path because we just cannot have that kind of energy exchange without a certain level of spiritual, energetic, soul level connection. I know that for me, definitely in the last 2 years, I have only had the inclination at all, and I'm want to be very careful how I say this. I've only had physical desire in one connection. And it was really different from how I remember having physical desire in the past. It wasn't it wasn't so physically focused. It was more of this desire of energetic merging. I don't even know if I'm making any sense here. But it's like this deep desire for energetic merging and creation of something new. I don't know what that is. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I really understand it, because I don't. What I will say is that the energetic sensations I feel in my body are incredibly different than in the past, when I was a lot more physically based, three-dimensionally based in that area of life. And now that I'm much more spiritually based in that area of life, it has changed how even the energy of that desire moves in my body. I'm also somebody who has experienced Kundalini awakening. It was spontaneous many years ago. Say about 4 or 5 years ago. And I think that is where that change started to happen in how I approached that part of things, because what I do remember is between there and 3 years ago, with the partners that I did explore that area with in that time period, even then I had already noticed it had started to change. It had started to take on a different kind of energetic force. And I don't want to say that it has become more discerning, but it has definitely become more in search of resonance, like in search of energetic resonance. And I think that's another thing we don't really talk about in spiritual spaces enough, is how a lot of us that get to a certain point, we don't really date anymore. We don't really seek that anymore, because there are so few individuals that have gone through the process of the healing work. And of course, we're not completely healed, but there's not a huge influx of individuals who have gone through the level of healing work and the level of spiritual work that it takes to get to this point. And therefore, it is really hard to find others and that connect in that level of resonance. And it's not a hierarchy at all. I'm going to have to make a separate video. It's not a hierarchy, but it is a vibration. It is a waveform. It is